So we're here with Marianna Smith of Petal Passion in Portland. Thanks for having us, Marianna.
You are welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, we're glad to. It was a nice little tour. Could you kind of start us off with just telling us a little bit about your farm, kind of the space you're in, and what you're growing, and just kind of go from there?
So Petal Passion is a floral design business and a small flower farm in North Portland, and I grow flowers in underused and neglected areas in my neighborhood, which means that I have a couple of neighbors that let me use their front yard or their side yard or parking strip for my flower venture. And I sell those flowers at the wholesale market or in my floral design bouquets.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I even saw like we had sides of an alleyway back there.
Yeah, in the alleyway I also grow. There's a lot of neighbors that let me use the space behind their fence to grow my flowers.
But you have a kind of guess about the number of flowers, or not the number of flowers, but the variety of flowers that you've got going on?
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Not huge pressure. I'm not wanting you to really dig, but
I have no idea.
Okay,
always
that's fair.
more.
That's fine.
Always more. There's always something coming up that I go like, oh yeah, that's coming up around this time of year. I am very flying by the seat of my pants. I am not particularly organized. I don't make planting plans or anything like that. I buy a bunch of seeds and I start a whole bunch of starts, and then I clean up as many places in the yard as possible.
So you can put
and then
them
I try to. Nowadays, I know where I want my snapdragons. I know where I want my straw flower. I know where I want the balloon flower. But in the beginning, I didn't have enough space to grow everything, so I planned about a tray of everything that I want.
Okay.
And what comes up, that's what I use. Snapdragons, because I've struggled with it so much, and I find them so pretty, and there's so many different colors that I can use. I allow more space for it now, and I had a really nice crop this summer, early summer, until the rust got in, and then I was too late too. Once you got rust in it, and then you have to use the neem oil, and I don't really like to use it because it's so sticky, and it gets on other stuff too. So I just I cleaned it, like the rust, like the powdery mildew. It just goes on the foliage, so I can still use the flowers. I just can't really sell them as a bundle at the wholesale market because it would be hard to, to promote that. But I can easily use it in a bouquet because I would have stripped the leaves off anyway.
Yeah, and then no one's the wiser, and it's fine.
Yeah. So that's how I use my snapdragons. But this year I had a pretty decent crop until the rust came.
So have you noticed that with any of your other crops? Are you starting to see that rotating your flowers is kind of a thing?
Oh, definitely. I was not thinking when I was planting the asters this spring. I didn't mean to plant them there, but that's, when you are a chaotic worker,
sometimes, some inefficiencies.
Yeah, because I meant to put my cosmos in the bed that I told you that didn't do, because cosmos will grow in pretty poor soil. But because I don't draw up a plan and I'm a little bit, I just have a tray of plants and I go like, oh, these will do good here. I don't always write down my ideas. I will come up with an idea in the one year and go like, oh, next year I should definitely plant my cosmos there. But it doesn't always translate to me planting it there the next spring because I don't keep a very good track of what I do. when I would buy a six-pack, for instance, rather than putting them all together, I would just plant some in Tom's yard, and some in my yard, and some in the alleyway, just to kind of get a feel where snapdragons would grow.
Where they would do the best.
And snapdragons were a real struggle for me in the beginning. I just couldn't get them to grow tall enough or without rust, and that's still quite a challenge. But my problem was I didn't have enough space because I was trying to cram too many things together. Snapdragons just want plenty of space, plenty of fertilizer, plenty of sun, plenty of water.
All the everything.
They want it all, you know. But as I was getting more space, I could become more organized and plant things together, but it was quite a bit of chaos in the beginning. And that's kind of how I work too, a little bit chaotic. I think that's my style, just wherever it goes or wherever it comes up, it's fine with me. I just needed more space, and I had a lot of seeds, and I saw that there were a lot of places in my area that people, you know, they went into gardening. You know, they were weedy yards that were just more trouble for people than they were worth. And I just decided to ask people if I could grow flowers there. And nobody said no.
It's just kind of like walking or looking around from your place and like, that place looks kind of run down. Maybe they'll let me replace it with something more beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I also found out that if it is too far away from my house, where I don't see it every day, I forget about it. So I had a bed up the road a little ways, but I only did that for like 2 years. They actually came over here. I met this guy at a business class, and we found out that we lived on the same street. And he goes like, well, I have an extra bed. You want to grow some flowers in my, front yard? I'm like, sure, I will. And I did that for like two or 3 years. But I did gladiolas there, but I missed a lot. You know, I didn't go over there every day to check and they did some watering for me, but it wasn't as much as it needed to be done, and so it just didn't work. It's better to have it close where I actually can take a hose and water it rather than depending on somebody else to water it, or have to go there with a little watering can. And
well, I think that's kind of an interesting point. Like you're utilizing underused spaces, and as you're pointing out, keeping it close makes things just easier to manage and everything. But also it means that the way that you're managing irrigation, you're just taking that mainline pipe or hose from your lot here and connecting it to the lot across the street or beside you or behind you. And I use my hose to water the big lot on the corner, and that is a very quiet little road, and my neighbor Justin, who lives between us, he's told me he's totally fine with the hose lying in front of his house. That's not a problem. And it lays across the street, and during a hot stretch it will lay there for a couple of days probably without me moving it all the time. But I try to move it when I can, when it's not really hot, where I have to water in the morning and water in the afternoon. Then I will take it out, and I've got it kind of so set up that I can just pull it in, and if I carry it around on the hardware where the hoses are connected, I can, carry it fairly easily and drag it across. But the beds across the street, those two beds in John's yard, I can't lay the hose across Oatman Avenue. Okay.
So, and John and Tom's yard, I give him some money at the end. He just tells me what I owe him in water, and I use his water.
Okay.
But it being a rental, the landlord being so hands off, And I was told by the people that sold me the irrigation system that when that system starts automatically and it stops automatically, it can shake the pipes and the water pipes. So I did not want to cause problems with the water pipes because of my system starting and stopping, because it's an old house and I have no idea what their water pipes look like. So I didn't want to, it just keeps it all a lot more simple. But with Tom, I've lived across Tom for 24 years. I don't care if I know how much, I don't care how much money he tells me I owe him at the end of the year. It'll be reasonable. You know, I know him well enough. He's not gonna, it'll be fine. And so I use his water. Recently, we've been talking at the wholesale market a little bit more of trying to coordinate a little bit better. So not everybody brings cafe au lait, dahlias and all that. So I'm really interested in cooperating with that.
Like you and other flower growers, trying to divide it a little bit more.
But nobody really knows how to do that. I mean, you can't tell somebody, well, I'm going to go and sell the cafe au lait dahlias. You guys do something else. So I'm not really sure how that would work, but it would be certainly a very good idea.
Yeah,
to cooperate a little bit better with each
rather
other.
Than compete with each other. Yeah. I've known some farmer collectives that'll do something similar with vegetables, and it's kind of set up as the first ones into the group got to decide what they want to specialize in, and then those down the line get to pick something what's different. Left.
Yeah.
But then within the group, there's also accountability to the group, and so I remember a story of like. One of the original farmers had always grown, I think, squash, and so always grew squash for this co-op. Yeah. And then 1 year or maybe 2 years, I'm not sure how much grace period they gave him, but like he kept messing up his squash, and it was messing up the whole everything, and so he lost his priority, and other people could grow squash, and he was still in the group, and he could grow other things.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might work, but there's definitely models. That are similar, and I do think it would be to a lot of people's benefit, because
if we could get it together, that would it would be good. Now there are big growers that grow so many flowers, which is really, I mean, we need these people because we need to compete with Frank Adams and Billingsley, the big importers and all that, for the flower growers, the Oregon flower growers, to play a big enough role in the industry. So we need those big growers. But compare that with a tiny little business like mine, it hardly makes any difference how many sunflowers I grow, because it is so minuscule compared to some other growers. So it would definitely take a lot of organizing, and everybody would want to grow white flowers, because white flowers, weddings, they always go better than colored flowers. So it would be.
Yeah, I don't know what the balance. I don't know what the balance would be.
Plus, a lot of flowers are perennial, so you either have them or you don't. If somebody were to say, you can't
just change next year.
I can't just switch, from, with vegetables. Almost all vegetables are annuals, but so many flowers are perennial that I grow. Like there's the Weigelia. The Weigelia is not so much for flowers, more for foliage. But the roses. Still, who gets this,
Yeah, you're not just going to put in roses next year
and then do something else.
Yeah,
and like my peonies, these are the first year that they're growing there. It'll take 3 years for those peonies before I can even pick a few stems, and then I can only pick a few stems for the first couple of years. So, and then for somebody to tell me that I can't sell my peonies anymore because so it would be much tougher to really regulate that rather than vegetables. But boy, we all talk about it. We should, because we come up with the same stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
But it is amazing how many flowers are being bought too. You know, there's a lot of, that's what I like about it so much. It's just a lot of going on, you know, a lot of flowers going around. It's busy these days.
Yeah.
That I find very interesting of growing flowers in the city, because you can find something thriving in every spot. You just have to find, you know, and learn about that spot and know what plants will do well there. But I can, you know, vegetables, they all want to grow in the sun, but flowers, there are shady spots, there are damp spots, and the tree that I planted there, for, you know, to shade the rest of my garden there, the redwood dogwood, the red stick dogwood, I planted that one there because it needs a lot of water, and I had always water puddling there in the winter time. You know, that was always a big puddle, and that tree totally took care of it.
No more puddles?
You know, there's no more puddle, and the tree drinks up the water that seems to just gather there. And when I started over there in the Morgan plot, I call it, it was a thin layer of soil. You know, it was very gravelly. It was not good
just
soil.
like construction fill kind of stuff.
Yeah. But after all these years, and I've brought in a lot of compost, but also the flowers themselves, you know, growing and dying in it, and it's such a nice thick layer of soil now. It's just, you know, it gives me pride, you know, because even if this is not flowers anymore, there is a big piece of soil now that is very arable, you know, it's very usable for gardening.
Yeah.
And it was just a weed-invested gravel pit.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I really do like that. I like that you've got the different spaces, and you don't have to make the spaces into a homogeneous thing with all the same environments as everything else. It's like it's a different kind of space. You plant different kind of things there, and you just keep going.
And I'm really hoping that my neighbor's going to actually get rid of those laurel trees, and which means that the astrantia that works so well there right now probably won't do so well there. It'll get too hot. But I'd much rather just find another place for those flowers, or grow something in front of it. You know, instead of my smoke bush, I'll grow something else big there. It would be nice to get those laurel bushes out of the way.
Yeah, start having to mess with them. And
so
pick up
there is one
seedlings
example where maybe my flower growing is changing, you know, the environment a little bit, but only for the better.
Could we talk a little bit about how you see your farm's interaction with the urban environment? It's like we talk a little bit right there. So you've got plots in different microclimates, and then you've got one with those laurels hanging over it. And so one of the things you're subject to is a lot of different land managers on a lot of different plots with potentially doing things out of your control. Like if on one hand you do want that laurel whacked back, but if they uproot it, now your shade garden is not a shade garden or a shade plot anymore.
Yeah, I do have to, because none of the places that I grow is my, you know, I don't rent it, I don't owe it, I just use it. And it is a little risky sometimes to put money and resources into a spot that somebody else, and that has happened in the alleyway. I had some nice plants in the alleyway, and the man who cut down the tree, it was actually a son of the woman that lived there. So I had permission from the woman, but then she passed away, and then the man came to take care of the property, and he never talked to me about the tree.
He just whacked everything.
He just whacked it out of whack, and you know, so that was a pity. It totally changed the alleyway. And it's a little bit hard to take sometimes, but I've always known that, and my husband is very good at reminding me, Marianna, it's not yours. so it's not mine, and I'm just happy to use it when I can, but it can be frustrating, especially when they cut it off just before all the pussy willows was gonna bloom. You know, I mean, if I could have communicated, can I harvest first? Can we do this a month later or so?
Yeah, but they didn't contact you. And
no, he doesn't know me. I mean, I don't know him. He just was gonna take care of his mom's property, and he was just gonna sell the property. So the tree went.
Cleaning it up and
cleaned it up,
doing what he thought he needed to do.
Yeah, and there's nothing I can do about it. He's got his right to do that, and it's not mine. That's just the name of the game. But honestly, very little of that has happened. You know, I would love for the laurel bushes to go, but that laurel bush went. You know, I was hoping for that to go too one day, and it went. So I know maybe that one goes too.
Yeah.
So I've always known that things can fluctuate, but most of the time I get my way anyways.
What about, can we talk a little bit about that plot that you've got on the rental area?
Yeah.
How did that work out? Because there's renters in there, but then there's the actual landlord, and then above and beyond all that, the possibility or potentially even reality of those renters changing.
Yeah, that's why I was very hesitant to actually move into that property, because Tom is a homeowner, and the person that I had down the street was a homeowner, and John across the street is a homeowner. So I had the permission from the homeowners to be there, but the rentals, I had no idea how long these people would be there.
Yeah.
But I just needed more space at that time, and they were really encouraging me. And I just decided, well, what do I have to lose? You know, just some sweat and tears, and that you know, if I wasn't doing anything, that's what I would be doing anyway. You know, if it wasn't for my job, I like to garden. So, and I started very small. Honestly, it's just been from renter to sub-renter to sub-renter to sub-renter. It's never been empty. It's always, and everybody that lived there was fine with me keeping up with the front yard, and always has been. And now lately with Heidi coming, you know, such a capable woman into gardening, she just cleaned up the backyard, and I can, that's very optimistic for me, because, you know, through these difficult years, he didn't sell the property.
Yeah.
So I think I'm good.
I want to circle back a little bit to when you're first starting to grow a little bit more. I guess just what was it that you were looking for? What was, I know you were running out of space, but what was kind of the impetus that you needed to be bigger? That, like, I mean, business was going well, and you just needed to plant more plants?
Well, I started as a florist. I did not really intend to become a flower farmer, just because it had not occurred to me that I could be a flower farmer in the city. But because I went into floral design and I found out how many chemicals are being used on those flowers, it just really made me feel like I've got to find a way working with cleaner flowers. I just, you know, and because I loved gardening, it made sense for me to grow my own flowers. And as I normally go in my disorganized way of doing things, I just take it one day at a time, and I'm very happy when somebody says, hey, you want to grow flowers in my yard? I come over with my bag of seeds and I'll throw some seeds in there, and many crops come up and some don't. That's how it goes. And yeah, I take it, it's not a very structured model that I'm running here. It's very, I never know what I will do today. Let me put it that way. I don't have a week planned out. There's a couple of things. I always pick on Tuesdays. I always pick on Thursday mornings. And I always do deliveries on Mondays. I always have to make bouquets on Sunday afternoon. But other than that, I will get up in the morning and go like, okay, I'm going to work on my plants upstairs today. And then I go outside and I'm like, oh my God, no, this needs to happen first. So, you know, I see something that needs, like for instance, that smoke bush, you know, it started wilting, and I look up and go like, well, what could this be? And I realized that this is not good at all. So I had to clean up that smoke bush. I didn't plan on doing that, but I just had planned on looking up what was going on with it. And then when I found out what was going on with it, that's the first thing I had to do, because I just needed to clean that up, make sure that I wasn't spreading it all over my yard. And at the same time, it was also when my asters were not doing very well. So I was thinking that had something to do with each other. Although now talking to some farmers, I think it has a lot more to do that I was growing them in too long in the same spot. So I think I'm good there. So my husband asked me this morning, what are you doing today? Oh, I'm not sure, because, you know, I've brought my flowers there. And then he leaves and I'm like, oh my God, I have that interview this afternoon. I've got to go clean up. So,
I'm glad you remember me. I'm glad we weren't a total surprise.
I am sitting right kind of in between,
cusp
because
there.
This is also very much a hobby. And this is also very much a neighbor thing. You know, I mean, I'm an outgoing person. I like to know my neighbors, and I'm delighted that I've gotten to know Tom, and I'm delighted that I've gotten to know all those renters in the Halloween home, it was called.
Why is that?
Well, because because of the overgrowing of the vines, but also Christy lived there for maybe 3 or 4 years, but all those years, there was a Halloween scene on that porch. The entire year.
She lived there for 3 or 4 years. And during that time, it was Halloween.
It was Halloween the entire time.
Yeah. I don't blame her. It's up there, one of my favorite holidays, definitely.
There you go. So, I forgot where I was going with that now.
You're saying... You're still kind of, it's more hobby, and
it was nice to get to know. I would have never gotten to know those people.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to know a lot of people through gardening around here.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's I think a big part of Petal Passion too. The neighborly thing.
Yeah. I think that's kind of goes back to when I was asking about like that urban environment. That's one of the things that you could be growing all these flowers and potentially even like a bit easier if you were out somewhere with all the space and you didn't have to eke it out on the side of a fence.
Yeah.
But then your closest neighbor is a mile down the road or something. Where here you're connecting.
And
with
I'm finding out about that now too, because every time when I see an open spot or so, I go like, oh my gosh, I could just grow so many flowers there. When I go to St. John's, there's this big grassy spot that nobody uses. I'm like, oh man. But I've started growing my sunflowers at 47th Avenue Farm, on the big field on the farm, and I go like, oh, that's great. But all the cucumber beetles, I don't have any problems with cucumber beetles here. They're not, you know, when you have so much space and you grow so much and your crop goes bad, that's a lot of effort and time wasted on a crop that doesn't. Here, when something goes wrong, you know, I have little beds.
It's very compartmentalized.
I lost my asters this year, but, you know, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a couple of bushes.
What has your pest pressure been like? Like pests and pathogens? A little bit on the blight and the smoke tree, and then the cucumber beetles on sunflowers on the other farm.
Yeah, on the farm. You know, I have struggled with snapdragons, but I've had some good crops in between. I'm getting better. And
then we even talked about like rust and powdery mildew being kind of almost more a nuisance rather than an outright pest.
It will definitely stop me from selling the flowers at the wholesale market.
Yeah.
You know, because they're not going to buy it. But I can use them in bouquets where you normally would have stripped the leaves off anyway. So I can use those. I have had trouble with dahlias and earwigs. They have eaten, but this year, not. I have not had any trouble this year. And other years, I have. I don't know why. Maybe it's a cooler summer. I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but my dahlias are unaffected this year. And I've struggled with the earwigs in the dahlias. Not a lot of pest problems. I can't say.
Okay.
No, not really. The rust on the snapdragons are something I haven't solved yet. And then like powdery mildew on the lilac. But that always happens after the lilacs come out. So
well, convenient then.
Yeah,
okay,
so
cool.
It's not really. And what I'm doing is, obviously I don't use any chemicals, but I will use neem oil sometimes, although very sparingly. I'd rather give up on the crop, I think, rather than trying to fight it.
Just not really worth the time and the effort.
You know, the thing with flowers is, especially when you put them in a bouquet or you sell a bunch at the wholesale market, they have to be perfect. You know, I mean, I'm all for eating ugly vegetables, but flowers, you know, ugly flowers are just not
the entire premise
go.
is their appearance. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not worth fighting it very much.
Yeah, because as soon as you see the signs that you need to start fighting it, then the damage has happened.
Then the damage has happened, and I've tried compost tea. I make that sometimes, although this year I haven't really gotten into it very much, unfortunately, because it did kind of arrest the rust one year. It didn't take care of it, but it kind of kept it a little bit more compact. I buy compost by the truckload every year. I get a truckload of compost. And what else do? I have fertilizer that goes through my drip system. And what else do I use sometimes? I use compost tea, soap. There you go. I sometimes,
like some dish soap?
Yeah, I will use some dish soap and get rid of aphids or something like that. But no, I don't have a lot of pests. But also, I think that's because I have such small crops. You know, I pick my sunflowers and they're covered with cucumber beetle and bees and bugs and everything. I'm not particularly worried about bees, especially not so much since I'm cutting them really tight. You know, the bees don't care for those. They want the open stuff. But by the time I bring them here over to Portland, there is not one cucumber beetle on those sunflowers anymore.
What would be some advice that you would give someone who's looking to newly start growing in an urban space, like trying to grow some cut flowers in an urban space?
People are much nicer than you think. You know, when you see a place and you don't have room for your own seeds or for your own plants, I think it's a very good idea to find a neighbor that is struggling with the yard and just talking about doing something together.
See if you can both benefit from something.
Yeah, see, you know, I was completely surprised how easy it was to talk people into letting me use their spaces, and I get offered spaces all the time.
You know, and again, you're not the only one I've heard that from either. It's very interesting. On the outside, people looking and wanting to get in, there's this appearance that there's no land, that there's no room.
Yeah.
And there are kind of a lot of reasons that is kind of true.
Yeah.
But I've also repeatedly heard reports, read reports, and personally have been told that as soon as you're doing something, there will be more land offered to you than you can handle.
Yeah, I have turned down, and I don't turn anything down right here.
That's the biggest, one of the biggest reasons to be discerning would be, if everyone's going to offer you stuff, don't take the thing that's a mile down the road or 2 miles down the road. As much as you can, make it right here or 1 block over.
Yeah, I was very surprised because it took me a while before I you know, asked, and I wasn't encouraged. I always blame Mark, but he goes, "I'm going to do what?" I'm going to ask my neighbors if I can go what? So people, you know, there's a lot of people that where their yard is just a burden to them. And, you know, you may not get their whole yard, but maybe they give you a little corner or so. And then there's a lot of people that have little apartment buildings and you know, they want to grow some, you know, they don't have space. There's gardeners in apartments and they don't have space to grow. So I think it's not as hard as you think to grow something in somebody else's space. And I think you have to be very respectful of their space. You know, when my helper is there, I try not to make a noise. For instance, I had a cart for a while that I was using to, you know, get my flowers, you know, to carry my buckets. But I realized it made a lot of noise in the morning. And then I tried a different kind of cart with some different types of wheels, but it was still kind of noisy. So now I don't take a cart anymore because I don't want people to start thinking, "Oh God, there's Marianna."
Yeah, just you don't want some slow resentment to build.
Yeah. So what I do is I just go get a crop, and I don't take a bucket. I just take it back in here, and I do a lot of walking. But walking is a lot better for me than carrying. So I just go out and get a crop, and I bring it in, and I clean it, and I go out for the next crop.
As we said a couple times, you've made sure that it's all right here. So even if you are kind of ferrying it back and forth, you're not going that far.
Yeah, I don't have to go that far. And the other thing that is important for me, but it's also, I think, important for the fact that I've been able to do this for so long, is that I don't leave debris lying around. You know, when I do somebody's yard, it's not always I clean up everything, but I try to be respectful of their space. You know, I can't be like a real farmer, just, you know, throwing
just
the
pull up the
compost
weed
on the
and let
side.
go.
And it will get, you know, I have to
clean it up a little bit, keep it a bit presentable.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, between those two things, and being friendly and just being aware that when I'm picking at 6 o'clock in the morning, I don't make a lot of noise, although the crows will. I have a funny crow story for you. because they will talk to you in the morning. You know, I get there in the morning and it's not they, so I'll talk to them and go like, "Oh, good morning, guys." And but the crows were also a little bit of a pest because I would be planting little plants, and then they come after me and they pull them out or they eat them or you know. So then I kind of try to chase them away, and then they go like ah, 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 you know, and I'm waking up my neighbors. So then one year I decided I was like, you know, I'm gonna do it differently this year. I'm not gonna go and chase them away. I think I'm going to feed the crows, and maybe, you know, if I'm nice to them, maybe they'll be nice to me. So I got a bunch of nuts and some dried fruit, and when I was planted all my little plants, my little snapdragons or whatever it was, I put a whole bunch of nuts kind of on the sidewalk and dried fruit, and sure enough, they came to eat the nuts and the dried fruit. That was great. And 2 hours later, there is a dead rat carcass in my bird feeder.
Oh, how nice of them.
So coincidence, we figure. So Mark kind of throws it under the bushes somewhere, and within an hour, it's back in my bird feeder. So I'm not feeding any more any more crows.
No, you need to like transition them, start training them on a shiny thing.
Yeah, no,
like,
that's what I was hoping for.
Pick up some coins, you know?
Thank me, you know, how about some beads or so?
Yeah.
But no,
once in a great while you might find a ring. I mean, bring it on over. That's
what I was hoping for, but no, apparently the payment for the nuts and the dried fruit was a rat carcass. Yeah. Be respectful, and people are very generous with their yards, I find. And it's fun. It's fun to grow flowers and get to know the neighborhood a little bit better. Yeah, beautify the space. And I have to also say, it took me about 10 years of doing this before it actually became profitable. I actually, you know, I mean, I've never worked with a debt. You know, I've always put the money, but for 10 years I had to put pretty much all my money that came in and it had to go back in. But after about 10 years, I had all the bones in place. You know, I had my irrigation in place, I had my greenhouse, I had my place to sell. You know, I had my website, I had my basement, but it just started very small. You know, I didn't have a place to start my seeds. You know, just a kitchen counter, really.
Yeah.
I did a lot of hand watering for a long time.
Oh,
you
man,
know,
yeah.
especially over there because irrigation is expensive, and to just put that, and also in the alleyway, you know, I made it so official, you know, to
calculate
because, you know, there's a lot of people change, you know, the alleyway. I have permission from one person who lived there at one point, but when houses change, I didn't always go to the next renter or so. Is this because the house back there, that has new people in there every year.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't even hardly keep up or notice sometimes.
Yeah, so I'd rather, you know, if somebody's against me growing there, then just come to me. You can see where the hose goes.
Just follow it back.
You know who's doing it. And yeah, I think sometimes there may have been some people that were resentful for that somebody was in the alleyway taking up space because they want to drive their car through or so. But nothing that cannot be resolved, you know. We got a little bit of issues with where I have my borders. You know, they'll move my logs sometimes. But the alleyway for me is pretty hands-off. It's whatever comes from that comes from it, and whatever good I can do for the bees, that's good. And I just want to leave it where it doesn't become a blackberry invaded alleyway. Which, oh, this is kind of interesting too, because when we moved here in 1994, we moved in here and my kids went straight out the backyard into the alleyway. That's where they were going to play. You know, they liked to run around the living room and then they wanted to play. And the alleyway was really a pretty dirty place. So, and I knew my kids well enough that there was no way of keeping them out of the alleyway. So, and I didn't want them with all, you know, I mean, I'm not talking about needles so much, but I'm talking about just condoms
junk
and underwear and, you know,
just
trash.
Yeah.
So the first couple of months that I lived here, I started cleaning up the alleyway because I didn't want my kids playing, you know, with nasty stuff. So I've really occupied it for a long time. And the neighbor had planted a rose there, and then when she moved out, she goes like, Marianna, will you please take care of my rose and the blackberries? And I go like, sure. And the blackberries kind of stopped producing because there's a big oak tree that she also planted, so it got too shaded, so the blackberries got taken out. But I just kept on taking care of her rose there, and then I started planting some things
more
next to the rose, and then when the blackberries came out, you know, I go, well, we need to put something there, and so it just started very small, very organic in a way. The basement was my kids' playroom, you know. That's how the space got cleaned up and used, and then when they moved on, I started moving in with my plants. So it's been going on and, you know, simmering for a long time. I've been planting little plants in the alleyway for maybe more than 20 years. Even before I was a florist, I started, you know, cleaning up the alleyway and planting some things there just to make it look nicer. There was some very invasive species. There was blackberries there, but also butterfly bush that was popping up everywhere that I just...
Like Boudelia? Is that the one?
Yeah, it might be. That may be the...
I didn't realize it was weedy.
It's illegal to buy and sell now.
Oh yeah, no, so I think that's it. Yeah, it's like become a bad plant now.
Yeah, it's a very bad plant. But you can buy it now. It's a sterile variety,
cool.
so they are fine. But that was not, the sterile variety was not in the alleyway. There was a lot of, a lot of crappy stuff growing there and lying around. And it's just slowly changed. But when it really changed was when I was putting down the wood chips, and it makes it look so nice. And that's when people started kind of walking
taking
through
care of it,
and
taking a little bit more ownership themselves.
And it showed more, you know, the beds, you know, rather than just an alleyway. It had a path in the beds. And in those days, that is when the green zebra, that was another step in forward in my business, because the green zebra opened up on Lombard and they wanted to sell flowers, and I contacted them that I was nearby and I wanted to make them.
Are your flowers there? The ones
not anymore, but
oh,
I did for several years.
Cool.
I did.
Cool.
I had that account until it's very little money. Grocery store bouquets, and we couldn't agree on the place where to put the flowers, so they were just burning up. It just wasn't.
I stopped there before here to grab a drink, and I saw their flowers are in the front door, and I saw someone arrange them.
Yeah. And that's where I wanted them when I was doing it, but they were having my flowers up on the front in the sun, and it just, flowers don't sit in the sun. No. So I did not like where they were putting them, and so I basically, in the end, we kind of came to a mutual conclusion that it wasn't working for me anymore.
Okay.
So, and that's when I started selling at the wholesale market. Yeah. Yeah, that's when I started, because I started actually selling most of my flowers there, but it was not enough money, you know, and you know, putting 20 bouquets together takes a long time.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to bundle, you know, varieties together, you know, single varieties, and price them and sell them at the wholesale market.
So what are your outlets? What are your markets?
Well, I have my website for floral design, and I get a fair amount of business through my website.
And on the florist part of your business?
Yeah, that's the florist part of my business. And then the other outlet is the wholesale market. And whatever I don't use for my floral design, I try to sell at the wholesale market.
Yeah.
And that is my luck, because I'm so small but I'm so close to the wholesale market. It takes me 7 minutes to drive to the wholesale market.
Nice. Cool.
You know, there's 3 wholesale markets on the West Coast. There's one in San Francisco, there's one in Portland, and there is one in Seattle. And I live 5 minutes from the one in Portland.
Wow.
So that makes it for me, if somebody calls and says like, oh, do you still have some, you know, asters? And I go like, yeah, I can. It's okay for me to drive over there for 3 bunches of asters if somebody needs them or so. Or I'm so close, you know, this wouldn't make sense for somebody who had to travel, you know, 30 miles to sell at a wholesale market. That would be too far. But because I'm so close, it makes it profitable for me, because, you know, this week I sold some hops, I sold a few asters, I sold a few cosmos and some Japanese anemones. Not a ton of stuff, but enough for me to make it worth my while. But it wouldn't have been if I had to travel, you know, 30 miles back and forward.
Yeah, if you had to do any real moving to sell them,
Yeah, and like this morning, even my flowers were there, I will go there and get them off my cart and spread them out so they can be seen, you know. When everything is cramped on one, it's harder to shop. But I'm the only one that can do that, because nobody else is close enough to take.
Interesting. Okay, so you can kind of like.
So for me, I can, you know,
better display your
I can,
stuff
I can. I have less, but
it looks better.
I can put everything, you know. I can go over there, because they will put your stuff in the cooler for you. You pay for it, but you have to put it on your card, and they'll put it in the cooler, and then they'll take it out the next morning. But they don't take it off your card. But I can go over there and take it off my card and spread it out. Now, I don't do that every morning, but I'll do it on Friday mornings, because, you know, it's a big shopping day. Thursdays not so much, but Friday mornings there's a lot of people coming there for, you know, for the shopping. So it makes it worth for me to, even though I don't have that much, to go over there and take, you know, half an hour and spread it out so people can see what I have. Because it's, you know, display has a lot to do with how much you sell. You know, if it looks good and they see it, it's hard to see something between a whole bunch of other stuff, you know. If it's more displayed, here's the green, here's the white, here's the purple. It's eye-catching, more eye-catching.
Do you see any challenges on the horizon for urban agriculture or growing in the city?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. I don't know. I am still occupied with the challenges that are happening now, so I'm not really looking so much in the future. For urban growing, well, it is harder now to find neglected spaces than it was 15 years ago when I started. I think it would be harder probably to find places, because we have so much infill now too. So I see a challenge there, but not impossible, you know. I mean, we just have to rip out a few streets here and there.
Yeah. Find a better use for some stuff.
Get rid of some parking lots or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. I have not really thought about it a whole lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. And my last question is kind of more for you. Is there anything that you'd wish that we'd covered, or something that I haven't asked but you want to make sure is out there? I just want to make sure
I don't know how the city feels about my business, because I didn't ask anybody, of the city if I could plant in.
Yeah.
But I did actually attend a business meeting in Kenton with some city people, and they loved what I was telling them that I was doing. So I think city people probably would love for more flower farmers to be in the city, because it's a community building venture. I think growing, not necessarily flower growing, but growing things.
Yeah,
People are interested in, and that's the thing. When I'm working in my yard, I meet so many people. And I also think that it helps keeping crime down, because I'm always walking around here. Almost every day, I'm outside putzing around in one of my gardens or in my alleyway.
And you're going into these kind of like neglected, underutilized spaces, which were, just like you talked about the alley, the very reason that you were able to plant there was because no one did anything there, which is the same reason that people would go there, because it's not looked at. I had a train of thought there for a moment that I just lost. There was an talking about, this is what I want to say. They were neglected at that time, but they're not neglected anymore. But when that tree went down, which I really regret, it was such a idyllic space. That night, my neighbor saw two people making out in the alleyway. And he's been a little bit of an issue, because I've parked in the alleyway sometimes, and he called the police on me. But I tell you something else. He called the police on me. And I know it was him, because he was on his roof. He was like looking at you. Because he was working on his roof, and I had parked in my alleyway, and my car was on the truck to pull it off, and I just happened to walk out with a bouquet. Oh, the tow truck? Yeah, the tow truck. My car was on the tow truck, and I walk out with my bouquet because I had a delivery, and my car is on the tow truck, and the tow truck guy is like, "Is this your car?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes like, "Okay, I'm gonna take it down. I'm glad you're here." He goes like, "You're gonna have to pay this ticket because this is from the police, but I'm so glad you're having your car," because he saw what I was protecting. I just didn't want people to drive through that tree, and he just let me go. He just took down my car. So I've always known that I cannot go further past his, because he's got a garage there. It makes all the sense. He wants his car. But I had hoped that he could just come in from the other side, that he didn't have to come in from this side. But when I ask him that, I go like, "Can you just use the other side?" He goes like, "Oh no, I have to come in from both sides." I'm like, you don't understand. Sometimes I'm driving from here and I just one more block. And he goes like, "Well, I saw the entrance here. The entrance looks really good." I go like, "Yeah, I just spent $400 on gravel right at the entrance." I go like, "You want to, put any money towards that? That'd be great." No, he wasn't interested in that. But it was. God, what was I thinking of just now? It's so funny. I can't remember now. Oh, you know what I told when he told me, he goes like, "No, I go like, but why? Why do you have to
come through this side, you know? And he goes like, well, you know, I just drive in here and then I have to drive out like this. And I go like, you need to learn to drive. So why don't you just learn to drive? So that's what I told him.
Come back, we'll talk about this again.
Yeah.
You'll fix yourself.
But really that's really the only friction I've had with any of the neighbors. And, you know, this was years ago and it's fine. You know, we speak again, but...
we speak now.
Yeah, well, not very much. But yeah, I don't know why he has to come into it. And he does sometimes, and he'll, you know, and somebody dumped a bunch of cat litter in my...
Oh,
yeah,
no.
That was pretty gross. So I don't know if that was just somebody not thinking or somebody sabotaging the alleyway. So those are little things that I can talk about, you know, that have not been so great. But it's really just one person, and he's just resentful that he can't zigzag through the alleyway.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Kind of ridiculous. Mostly ridiculous.
Yeah. But anyways, I think he's found his peace, and I find my peace with the alleyway. I don't have to make money off the alleyway. I'll be happy to just keep up with that and make it look good. And, you know, get the bugs in there and some fun plants, and he can drive his car through there.
He can drive both sides.
Yeah. Come in from both sides.
Some days I just come in from this side to go to the other side to turn around and come in and park.
Yeah. I've learned to just let it go. A lot of things, just let it go and see what happens. And most of the time, things are not half as bad as you think it's going to be, you know. Because I had anticipated him wanting, you know, having a problem with the alleyway years before it actually became, you know, just because he has that opening, and I knew that at one point he would want his garage.
Yeah.
But I just had always hoped that he would be happy with one side. But no.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it. I liked looking, I mean, all your flower beds, of course, and the way that they're arranged on the different plots. I like that aspect just because that's kind of where I'm coming from, this agriculture-urban interface. But yeah, just seeing, even though I know you say that there's no real plan, you've got something going, you know. It's like it's working.
You know, it's just not a business plan.
Yeah,
you know.
But that's all right.
I have nothing on paper. I even my planting, and I wish I was more organized. But every time when I'm going like, oh, I should write this down. I need to remember it. I go like, well, where am I going to write it down? And I have several books where I write things down, but I never look at it. You know, or I forget which book I've written something in. Or you know, I mean, I'm just not organized in a writing down way. And every year I tell myself, okay, now I'm going to make a calendar, and I'm going to be up at 6 o'clock, and I'm going to be doing this from 6 to 7, and this from 7 to 8. But that's not how reality works for me, you know? I mean, all of a sudden you find your smoke bushes
going down,
wilting, and you're going to need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So the best laid plans get side-railed because Mother Nature has just decided to do something else for the day. Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you guys very much for being so interested in my tiny little business.
Yeah, it was neat.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I hope I can have inspired somebody to take over the neighborhood.
Yes. Some reclamation agriculture.
Yeah, there you go.